Aloha and welcome to the TSL podcast. This is episode 151 and we are still in Honolulu, Hawaii. And I'm doing this podcast a little bit rogue. Why? Because the internet here where we're staying is not so good. So I'm just doing this one on my phone. If you're listening on iTunes, the audio quality is going to be a little bit different. If you're watching on YouTube, awesome. Welcome. You get to see an awesome background and all that sort of good stuff, but a little bit different than how we normally do it. And it's kind of windy today as well. But this is an episode that's super important. Okay. Very, very important. And it's important because it affects every man. It affects every man at every stage in his life. And it has to do with inadequacy. Inadequacy in all things, but mainly how this has come up about 5 times this week is with our sex lives and relationships. So huge thing. And if you let it come into your life, and we all have a issue with this, it's something that just absolutely, man, it disempowers us. It's the reason why we'll have bad relationships. It's the reason why we don't approach women. It's the reason why so much stuff goes south. And if we could spread the message as we do, which is the purpose of this podcast, God, man, so important. So let's start this off. I got an email earlier in the week about a guy who's in a relationship. He's new in a relationship. He's in his early 20s. And I'm bringing this up because this is so common. Literally every client of mine in their under 25 range says that this is a big deal. Now, this might be a big deal to you if you're in your 30s or 40s. But sorry about that wind. But in your 20s, man, massive, crippling. And he said that he's in this relationship. His girlfriend loves him, but he feels his penis size is too small. He feels his sexual performance is off, and that she's had more experience than him. And that's got to fuck with you as a guy. You know, there's no reframing of that. There's no out-alphaing that. Even if you do accomplish those states of mindset, it's not going to help you. Now, I also, on our members call on Sunday, today is Tuesday when I'm recording this, there was one of our longtime clients, and he said, man, I'm dating a girl. This guy's in his late 20s, and he's been with TSL for about 5 years. And he says, man, I've been dating a girl, and she is 19, and she's had more sexual partners than me, and I'm, 29, or 29, 30, somewhere around there. So either early 30s, late 20s. And so he's like, man, how do you deal with that? And actually, he got more detailed about it. He said, how do you deal with that when you feel that she's more sexually experienced than you and you're not good enough? But also, how is it that you deal with it in terms of just feeling like a man within the relationship? And we really got in depth to this. So it was a real rich discussion that came with him on it. Now, also, we jump to the guys who haven't had any sexual experience, which got brought up again on the calls. And a guy also in his early 20s, little to no sexual experience. And he was saying, man, God, my dick's too small. I have premature ejaculation. I don't know if I can have a relationship. There are times where I can get it up to porn and I can't get it up to sex. And all these different things come into play about this inadequacy. And let's jump to one more example just to kind of round it out. And again, this gets brought up a lot. But in my case, man, it's starting to rain. We got some pineapple rain, so we're getting wet and wild out here. But in my case, 39 years old, I'm in a relationship. We've been in a relationship going on 5 years now. Amazing relationship. We have 2 kids. My wife, very experienced with sexuality, myself included. But what about those times when I feel inadequacy? When I feel I'm not good enough? And actually this parlays into yet another question that was from a guy on the call at a totally different time when nobody was on it. But he's about to have a baby, and he was talking about the inadequacy being felt with that, and I can relate with that, So what happens when we feel inadequate as men? What happens when these things go through their course and we want to be true, we want to be authentic, we want to state our minds, we want to state our opinions, we want to be honest, we want to be able to share who we are, but we also want to feel like a man. We want to feel strong. We want to feel like that rock. We want to feel like the thing a woman can depend on as I try and avoid this wind and the rain that's coming my way. Now, this is how it rains in a way. It's awesome. This, if you're watching on YouTube, very little back there. Well, sometimes it gets pretty crazy, but it passes so fast and it's sunny. Pineapple ring. But in any case, what happens when those things happen? I know in my case, and I'm a little bit older, have a lot more experience, but when I was in my early 20s, crippling, we'll get to that, that lack of feeling like I can do it, like I'm the man for the job. Let's say I'm about to be a dad. Let's say I have failed as a father. Let's say my wife is not sexually satisfied. Let's say that I'm not able to give her orgasms. Or let's say there's this other feeling that always gets brought up when men are talking about this, is that what happens when I just think that something's a little bit off? I just think that something's a little bit off. When I start to feel that, I start to do some things that could be a little bit crippling in a relationship. I can start to resist. I can start to get resentful. I can start to build contempt. I could start to rebel. I could start thinking that this isn't the way of man, and we'll get into that. Like, this isn't the way that a man should be. He shouldn't be locked down in a relationship. He shouldn't be subservient to a woman. I need to be more alpha. I need to be more dominating and all these different things. And these things could all be true, and they do have their place in the role of masculinity. But are they really the right move for now? And see, I see a lot of men running from the responsibility of being a man and being able to hold on to that tension and run from their issues, try and live a different life. And that's not good, you know, and we see this in the dating industry. We have just, I don't know, hundreds of dating coaches that I personally know that have never had a relationship. There's like 2 of them, and their relationships are bizarre. They're odd. They're built on, I mean, I'm talking about 2 of them. They're built on such narcissism and just ridiculousness of the guys that can hold that down. And part of that is because, well, hey, you know, one of the messages that men are told in the dating industry, we get this from a lot of the online keyboard jockeys who haven't really done much, and you've heard me talk about them, is that, you know, it's not being masculine. You got to be alpha. But then you get a dating coach who's actually skilled in meeting women. He never has to go through pain. And I've been there, man. I've been there. That's why I'm saying it. I never had to go through pain. If I was in pain with a girl leaving me or feeling inadequate or feeling that I couldn't do it, I could so easily find another woman, and I was good enough in bed, still am now, but good enough in bed to be able to find a woman and sexually satisfy her, get her to worship my sexual being, get her to worship my dick, get her to love me sexually, that I never actually held out on the true joys of a relationship, okay? So one of the things with this, if you're in that situation, when you're in a relationship, things get kind of tense. And I'd say if you're past that 25 mark, that's a generalization, but it has to do with other problems that we're going to get into and some maturity that comes into this, life experience, that when I'm in that mode, I need a men's group. I need a men's group to give myself an outlet to go, man, fuck, I feel like shit. You know, my woman isn't having sex with me. She's not satisfied. She's mad at me. She says I don't make enough money. She says that I'm not good enough for my family. All these things that women say when they're dramatic, not because they're bad people, not because, I mean, it's an asshole thing. Those things could change, but I'm an asshole a lot of times. But when women are characteristically assholes in a relationship, they go for some of that stuff. And you have to see it as not the right behavior, but also a very normal and common behavior. So it's not a big deal, so you don't overreact to it. Men's group, absolutely imperative. And then also men's group for vision of what you want. Do you really want this relationship? Is this something that you can weigh the scale on and not make a reaction based off of your insecurity? Okay, which brings us to the other thing, which is a common theme in all of this, is you cannot communicate with your insecurity. When you communicate with your insecurity, it's not expression. So let's say if I'm feeling inadequate in my relationship, and Maria says something, and you know it's a big deal. It lasts for a couple days. Maybe it lasts for all week. That's a terrible feeling when you have a sense of inadequacy that has no other sort of food or validation saying that you are doing the right thing for 1 week. Jesus, man, that's hard to hold on to. If I don't have a men's group, I go crazy. But if I start communicating with my insecurity and chasing and going, oh man, please, you know, baby, I love you, da 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 da, come back to me, you know, I just want to, and you start lowering yourself in that way, you feel bad because, you know, all the internet, whatever bullshit is saying that's not the right thing to do. But you also feel bad when it's not feeding back to you and she's not listening. You know, and she might realize like, oh man, this guy, I can run him a little bit further on this, right? She might have a little fun with it. And what I need to do is I need to pick and choose the right times for me to be able to bring that up. All right. So I need to be able to go, all right, I'm just going to go on as business as usual. That sucks. Then that's a repression. I need to repress myself and go on as business as usual, do the family functions, do the next best action, do what's right. And I need a men's group for guidance on this often. And then what I really, really need to do is I need to wait for the right opportunity to bring it up. The right opportunity to bring it up, I mean, is a lot up to you, but it's when we're not emotional. When we're emotional, her or I, we cannot make a decision, okay? So when she's too emotional, angry, pissed off, in a scarcity mindset or whatever it is. And one thing that's so important, I'll talk about this in perhaps a relationship separate post, is that what women really want, what they crave, is security and to be cherished. And if we can do that as men in the right way, man, we can solve a lot of our pre-existing problems. If women can feel that security and feel unique and beautiful only to them, that you see that, so important. A lot of men think it's like sexual satisfaction, and this does come into play, but man, those two things, massive in a relationship, okay? Not in a one-night stand, not in a fling, not if you're just dating somebody, but in a relationship. Now, let's jump to that early 20-year-old guy. Let's say you're inexperienced, or you're just getting sexually active, or you do have a relationship and you're 22, 23, 24, you'd say you're 20. You're gonna naturally have these feelings of, I don't have what it takes. My penis size isn't big enough. I premature ejaculate. I'm addicted to porn. All this propaganda and all this anti-porn propaganda, which you've heard me talk about, is so important in the equation of the insecurity of men. Okay? Because it's normal. It's normal to get carried away with porn. You can hear me talk about that. I gave a 21 convention speech on it, which may not be up at the moment, but it will be soon. And I gave a pod or a webinar on it that you can look to, and I'll link to it in this. Everything you know about porn and addiction is wrong, or porn and masturbation is wrong. So all that's so normal. But the reason why men, young men, and even older men get carried away with it is because we naturally have this insecurity of sexually not being good enough, because it's so important. Now, let me tell you, I'm probably average penis size, might be a little bit below average. Maria always says I'm packing, but that's when you're with a woman that you fuck her good, that's what she says about your dick. Or maybe she's just tricking me. But the thing is I mean, I've done plenty of gangbangs, I've had group sex experiences, I've seen and been in the room with other men who have larger dicks than me, and the women aren't as satisfied by them. Now, why and how does that happen? There's plenty of podcasts on that, or different things that we have towards that. If you want, you can email me about it. There's one that I did not publish that's from one of our calls titled The Man with the Golden Dick, and that will teach you how to fuck. But as I told one of the guys that I emailed, that's not going to help in your relationship. If your relationship's already there and she's bringing up stuff like, oh, my ex-boyfriend gave me more orgasms, and she may not be doing that to be mean. I'm assuming that. If she's doing that to be mean, you should drop her. She's not your girlfriend. She's a bad person to have as a girlfriend. But, sorry, let this wind clear. Got to go in the shade. Sorry, guys. But good content, good material, very important. Is if she's saying it just because she's saying it, and this happened to me when I was 21. I had a girlfriend. She had way more experience than me. She was the second girl that I was ever with. I was 21 years old. And I was like, oh, my penis isn't big enough. I come too quick. She doesn't orgasm as good. And then she tells me, and I lied to her. I said I had more sexual experience because I was insecure about it. And I remember when we broke up and I told her the truth after we had broken up. She's like, oh man, that makes so much sense. That's why you were so worked up about it all the time. That's why it's like you brought it up over and over again about how you were insecure about this and that. But she had told me that she had had different types of sex with different men. She'd had anal sex with different men. She wouldn't have that with me. She'd had threesomes with other men. She wouldn't have that with me. She was just more sexually experienced. She was older than me too. And it was just an odd situation, you know. And I remember I would keep bringing it up. I'm like, well, look, are you coming good enough? These are normal things that I still ask to this day, but there was a different desperation behind it. Are you coming enough? Am I good enough? Like, am I fucking you enough? Well, you fucked other people. Then I'd get mad about things. Now, here's the thing. So that's me directly talking about my insecurity. That's still not great because it's not the time and the place to do it. We can do that when we're not emotional, when we're not reactive to it, and that's both parties. And that can be a tough place to find, but that's the place to bring it up. Where I was bringing it up worse is in the stuff where I was afraid to bring it up. So I wouldn't say this was about sex. I wouldn't say this was about me being insecure about her sexual experience more than me. And where I would bring it up in places where she didn't even know I was pissed, but we'd be going to get donuts or go to the bar or something, and she'd order a drink and I didn't order it for her, or she would order a drink for another guy in the party or something, and I'd get upset. But I wouldn't get upset then, I'd get upset on the drive home. And I'd get upset and I'd have this lingering of obsession kicking in. Now, this can still happen to me today, even in my relationship, because it's so tough when you're that close to somebody to communicate everything that's in here and throughout your being to somebody else as honestly as you can, especially when it's very even hard for you to see yourself. But man, in those early 20s, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 was terrible. And the worst thing is then I learned how to get good with sex. I did what every man wants. I learned how to get good with sex, get good in bed, get better with meeting women, get better with getting all the validation that I thought was, going to solve everything, which was to get her to sexually worship me and all those things. All that man with the golden dick stuff. And the problem was I never fixed those insecurities within me. So let's say I have an insecurity about being bullied. If I just get strong and learn how to fight, that's not necessarily going to solve my problem. That might be a stepping stone. That might actually be a component in it. But a lot of times we as men or women who are in pain think that the solution is the opposite of our pain. We always hear this, or me say it, pain shows us where the problem is, but it doesn't show us our solution. Solution is outside of that pain. So we get muscles, we learn how to fight, but then somebody intimidates us and we're still scared. Even if we win the fight, we're still terrified. Even if we win the fight, we're still that little boy that doesn't have confidence, that did this because he didn't have confidence. We do this with our sex lives over and over again. So as a guy who's in his early 20s, he's going through that, you need to be around older men. And you don't need to be around older men in their 30s. You need to be around older men that are in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s. I think this is massively important. And I think it's massively important for any men's group, is that you need to be around men that have been divorced, that have been kicked in the nuts by life, that have fallen in love, that have gotten their heart broken, that have gotten their ass kicked, that know the meaning and depth of all these things, that know it's not just black or white, that know that when they get divorced or they get dumped, it's not because women are bad, it's because men and women are different and we communicate so differently. And that there's also this good side, and that there is a time when you need to compromise yourself for the better of everything. And man, let me tell you, in a relationship, that is so important. I'm not saying that you compromise yourself and you throw yourself out the window, but maybe that day, maybe that hour when you're too angry and she's too angry, or you're too insecure and you're reactive and she's reactive, you don't need to be talking. You need to be together. You don't need to be hating each other, but you need to do the next best thing. And when you hear men who've gone through this and really gone through it, I mean, man, this is one of those things. You can have whatever relationships you want. As you may have heard me say, there isn't really a monogamy or a polyamory. These are just man-made concepts to our sex lives. But our sex lives naturally urge us to pair up. I mean, actually in our brain, in the neuroscience, our pair bonding areas of the brain are bigger than most other mammals. And that's what causes us to want to be together and move into monogamy. But monogamy is a cultural definition. It's not a biological one. It's not one that's innate within us. It's something that derives out of communities, and those things can all vary in so many different ways. But so is polyamory. And polyamory, sure as shit, is not some natural way for us to do it. It's our man-made interpretation of what we have with our minds and bodies. So anyway, nonetheless, you can have whatever relationships you want. But if we don't get men who've experienced, those men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who've experienced these things and say, hey man, calm down. Or hey man, chill out. Yeah, go party, go make mistakes, it's okay. Go and have good relationships, bad relationships, but don't beat yourself up about it. Man, that is so important. Because what I thought, see, when I was in my early 20s, so many of you guys have it way better than me. I wasn't having sex. My first girlfriend, who I first had sex with, was kidnapped and raped, and it was a really horrible experience. I didn't have sex from then until I was 21. 21 to 23, I had one girl. Got another girlfriend after that, got another girlfriend after that. Never solved the problems within me. Always thought there was something wrong with me. Didn't have an outlet. Didn't realize that this might be normal for me to be apprehensive about sex. It all because my girlfriend had been abducted. I didn't realize that it was also normal for me to want to have rough sex and for me to want to have sex that might be degrading at times, or what feminism would call rape culture and all these things. I didn't realize that that was a normal thing, and to desire those. I didn't realize that masturbation was normal. I didn't realize that having obsessive moments of masturbation was normal. But this is key. And actually, I mean, if you want to know the stats on it, you can watch my webinar, but it's like 2% of people that get carried away to the point of dysfunction with masturbation, continuous sexual dysfunction, for beyond 6 months. So if you are masturbating to excess and you can't get it up or something like that, or you premature ejaculate, or whatever the different issues that come with porn, and you're part of the 99% of men who do that but don't talk about it and keep it a secret, and you can't perform because of it, most likely in 6 months to a year, that will naturally pass. Now it sucks when it's happening, but I wish I would have known that was normal, because I thought it was fucked up. So then 5 years later, I still think I'm fucked up or have that secret within me. And I go, man, geez, this and that happened. I like rough sex. I masturbated too much. I'm subservient, or my girlfriend walked all over me and I'm never going to tell anybody, or she was more sexually experienced than me. And we don't pick and choose the right times to bring this stuff up. So imperative, join a men's group, people, and really listen to this, because this is super, super important. I'll put this in the blog post to it at thesexuallife.com/151. But join a men's group. Look, Austin Men's Development is for free. I get that a lot of people, there's a lot of guys on there. We have about 50 to 70 hardcore posters on there, but there's also 700 guys in the group at the time as I'm making this. And also, there's also our membership, which has a monthly fee. It's so important to have men to talk to. Every Sunday we talk. We talk a lot. We're really open. There's also a bunch of content and material that you get with it. But what's also important is don't communicate when you're angry. Don't communicate when you're emotionally reactive. You may need to discharge. You may need to talk shit. You might yell. You might communicate. We're all going to do that. But don't think the solution's going to come from that. The solution's going to come when we all calm down. When all parties involved in it have let down their guard. And you as a man need to learn to hold on to that tension for the right time of release. Maybe a day, hopefully not. Maybe a week, hopefully not. If it's going on for months, that's probably a bad thing. But as you get into to more in-depth relationships, guys in their 50s and 60s will tell you that, remain married for a long time. There were times where, it was a rough patch for months. It's a rough patch for maybe years. But they were able to function through it, and their decision to make that commitment, it may not be your decision, was there, but there's a value in it. It doesn't make them weak, actually makes them quite strong, I would say. But that also doesn't mean that you can't have those relationships. So if you think about this, men's group, learning to hold on to your tension is a true art of masculinity. Massive, massive, massive. And guys, why we do this podcast, why this is out here, is to just spread that word. We have it here for you. Sex, relationships, being a man doesn't have to be about hate or anger. It doesn't have to be about confusion. It doesn't have to be alone and looking for stuff online. But it has to do with men unifying and being together and being able to talk and being able to be honest, being able to be who they are, being able to show their fears without having to front a false sense of self. And God, man, grow from that. Let's do that. That's what this is. That's what Austin Men's Development is about. That's what our membership is about. That's what TSL Online is about. That's what our workshops are about. And that's what we do. You're a part of that. Let's do that. Spread the word. I hope that you like, what's going on with the podcast. We're upping the quality of it. I know this one, the audio isn't as perfect as we always had it, but we're on the fly here in Hawaii. I thank you so much for listening. And if you like the different promotional things that we have, like if you see on Facebook, our little clips that we put that are 30 seconds to a minute, like those. If they're appropriate for you, share them, be a part of it. Get this word out there, because it's a great thing when men can get together, be honest, be themselves, and change and evolve from that. We don't need to live in scarcity. We don't need to live in saying, I'm not getting enough, and we need to fight. We need to say, I have, I am, you are, and let's do it. Thank you so much for listening, watching if you're on YouTube. Subscribe, give your comments. I'm not one of those people that puts fake comments on the iTunes thing. That's a thing. Yeah, so leave a genuine comment if you do like it, and I appreciate it so much. Aloha from Hawaii. We'll see you back in Austin, Texas